So I'm Idean Salehyan. I teach judo here at Kama Jiu-Jitsu. We do judo on Monday and Wednesday nights. I have a black belt in judo, and about a year ago I started picking up Jiu-Jitsu with Ryan Young. So I've been here for about a year. I made it to blue belt recently, and I've been enjoying the ride. So judo and jiu-jitsu have a common origin, right? So jiu-jitsu was developed in Japan as an unarmed system of combat by the samurai. And then Jigoro Kano, he came along in the 1880s and took classical jiu-jitsu and sort of modernized it. So when we think of the belt ranks and gis and sort of a structured curriculum, Jigoro Kano was the one that really solidified the different various styles of jiu-jitsu. He took what was useful, took out some of the more dangerous, lethal techniques, and focused on those techniques that could be practiced safely and effectively. Now, one early student at the Kodokan, which was the early judo school, was Mitsuya Maeda. And Maeda traveled to Brazil, taught the GRACIE'S judo, and the GRACIE'S then subsequently developed the ground fighting aspect of judo to a much higher degree. So over the years, judo and jiu-jitsu, even though they have a common origin, they started to diverge, where judo focuses much more on the stand-up game, and competition judo definitely rewards the big, effective throw, while jiu-jitsu is concentrated more on the ground game. Now, that's not to say that judo doesn't have a ground game and that jiu-jitsu doesn't have a stand-up game. It's just a matter of emphasis. So they're very much related, but just maybe have a slightly different take on rules of competition and then sort of a philosophy of self-defense as well. If you look at striking arts, you have karate, Muay Thai, Taekwondo. On one level, it's punching and kicking. So why are they different styles? Well, this style will emphasize certain things. So Taekwondo will emphasize kicks to a much greater degree than some of the other striking arts. Others will emphasize something different. So judo and jiu-jitsu are both, grappling type arts where the goal is to score an effective takedown, throw somebody, and then control on the ground. But they just have a different emphasis, a different curriculum, a different belt structure. So even though they have a common root and a lot of overlapping techniques, they are different. And being good at judo doesn't translate into being good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and vice versa. A lot of judo people, and Jiu-Jitsu people for that matter, it becomes tribal, right? This is my team, this is my tribe, we're the best, you guys suck. And that's not a real productive way to think about it. Judo and Jiu-Jitsu are different. They both have their relative strengths. The GRACIE'S did learn judo. Mitsuya Maeda was a judoka from the Kodokan, trained at the Kodokan, but then they subsequently developed the ground fighting of classical judo to a much greater degree. And they've emphasized different things. So judo has gone in the route of being an Olympic sport. And the vast majority of judo schools approach judo as a sport with its own set of rules, its own competition structure, its own way to win. Whereas at least the traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the way we do things here at Kama, there's still a self-defense oriented nature to it. So, how do you defend against strikes? How do you make sure that you've covered yourself to get the clinch and get the takedown? Those are things you're not going to really get in judo, because judo has become much more sport oriented. And then more sport oriented BJJ schools, they have their own set of competition rules, their own structure. So there is overlap, but for judo black belts or people in the judo world to claim that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just judo, I invite them to go to any jiu-jitsu school and train with high-level, jiu-jitsu practitioners and test their skills. If it was identical, if it was the same, they would be doing great. But I'll tell you from experience, black belt in judo, I know newaza, the ground fighting elements of judo, but then you come into jiu-jitsu and, blue belts and purple belts are, giving you a hard time or just dominating you. So it's not the same. It's definitely different. They both have their own strengths. They complement each other well, but they're not identical arts. Judo gives you an excellent base. Judoka are really hard to take down. And that base translates into standing and groundwork. You also get some of the agility, some of the physical stamina that's required, but also kind of a sense of how to move your body and position your body to get the leverage and so on. A lot of the core principles of fighting on the ground are not all that different from fighting on your feet. The leverage, the weight distribution, the connection, having a solid base. Those are things that transfer across both arts. So I think people that start with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, transitioning to Judo, they tend to pick it up really quickly. And I think the vice versa is true. I mean, you'll have to ask Ryan if I picked it up quickly. But I like to think, that some of those concepts that I learned in Judo definitely helped me improving my game on the ground. A nice Judo throw where their feet go flying up over their head and they slam on the mat with very little effort. It's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of art to catch someone not with a lot of strength and power, but with that perfect technique where they're just upside down and crashing on the mat. I mean, that's a work of art. And that takes years to develop. So, when I was younger, I used to play a lot more of a power game in Judo, rely much more on strength and speed. But as I'm getting older, I'm trying to catch people with that perfect technique and not having to muscle it. So I like that approach here at Kama Jiu-Jitsu as well as on the ground. It's trying to get that perfect technique, that arm bar, that choke, that sweep, without really having to rely a lot on the physical gifts that a person brings to the table, but doing it with pure technique. Now with Judo, I just think it's a lot more exciting because those big throws are just really fun to watch. You watch the Olympics or some of the major international level judoka, and it's just beautiful to see it perfectly executed throw. In sport jiu-jitsu, a lot of people are playing for points. I got 2 points, I got 4 points, and they're just trying to get those, points to rack up. So at the end of time, they can say they won. Whereas in Judo, when you're executing a throw, you're not trying for a half point. Judo has grades of throws. So a perfectly executed throw is ippon, it wins, it's done. But when I'm in a Judo competition and I'm trying to get a throw, I'm not trying to go for a low scoring technique. I'm trying to go for the ippon. If it just so, doesn't work out my way, I might get some partial credit for what I've done, but I'm going for the ippon. A lot of people that get into the sport mindset are trying for those incremental points and are not going for the submission. They're going for an advantage. They're going for 2 points here, 3 points there, 4 points there, instead of going for the win, which is what we train in Judo. Like I said, I think 95% of Judo schools focus on the sport aspect of it. It's a sport. It's an Olympic sport. It has martial arts elements to it. So, a trained judoka in a fight is going to do well because they just understand the mechanics of throws and takedowns and so on. But Judo, as it's practiced by the vast majority of judoka around the world, they're focusing on Olympic style IJF competition Judo. Now, I think there are some benefits to competing from a self-defense perspective. You have to work through adrenaline and nerves, and you have to train with something on the line. It's not like rolling in class where we're friendly and we know each other's game and we're kind of working to make each other better. When you're in competition, you're there to win. There's something on the line, and you have to fight through nerves. You have to fight with something at stake. So your physical conditioning has to be excellent. You have to watch your diet. So all of that is good in terms of translating to the reality of self-defense, where you have that adrenaline pumping. It's really a life or death situation. Hopefully not, but you could get into that situation. That said, when you focus purely on sport, you start developing habits that are specific to the sport that might not translate well into self-defense. So in Judo, for example, if I get pinned on my back, if I'm flat on my back and I get pinned for 20 seconds, I lose. So what judoka tend to do on the ground is turtle up. They turn to their belly, they get into a ball so you can't pin me. Wrestlers will do the same thing. Well, that'll help you not lose the match, but from a self-defense perspective, it's terrible. you're just gonna get pounded. And sport jiu-jitsu, you know, pulling guard is probably not, in most scenarios, a good self-defense oriented technique, but it's something that works for the sport. So I think just if people are cognizant of, you know, this is for the sport world, but if we're doing self-defense, we have to, you know, change our focus. I think the sport and the pure self-defense, I think they can complement each other as long as people are really aware what they're training for and the pros and cons of the techniques they're learning. I mean, I came here because I wanted to do self-defense oriented work. You know, being able to defend against strikes, being able to, you know, have that focus. You know, I competed for years, so I kind of got that bug out. You know, I've done well in some competitions, done poorly in other competitions. Overall, you know, I was a decent competitor, but definitely not an international level competitor. You know, so I kind of got it out of my system. So I kind of want something that's going to sustain me for the rest of my life. And I found it here, as opposed to places that are just playing a very athletic sport game. That said, you know, at some point I might try competition in jiu-jitsu just to see how I do, but it's not the focus of my training by any means. You know, I will say, you know, one of the benefits here, and I'm really fortunate and blessed that Ryan has let me teach judo here, and now that we've, you know, reintegrated judo and jiu-jitsu, we do it both here. I started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu because a lot of BJJ guys would come to my judo club and train with us because they wanted to cross-train, and vice versa. So, you know, BJJ guys were coming to learn takedowns in our judo club, and our judo folks were going to a BJJ school to learn better ground skills. So we had to kind of cross-train at different locations and have different membership rules and all this kind of stuff. But here we do it integrated. So, you know, the judo class follows immediately after the beginner's class Monday and Wednesday. So people will hopefully be doing both from the get-go. And they don't have to look elsewhere to cross-train. They don't have to go to a different school to get good at takedowns. They can do it all here, and I think, you know, that's a core strength of our school.